Hey, welcome to another episode of Bram Radio. Welcome. Today is super exciting. We have a special guest with us today. This is my friend, Mr. Ryan Beck. Now, before we start getting into who you are and all the amazing stuff that you have recently done in technology, as soon as we start talking about that, everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, I totally know, I totally recognize, I understand it, I have it on my phone. I want them to understand just who you are at your core. You're just lay down your basics of life.
Jeff, thanks for having me on here. It's a privilege.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked you're here
alongside you.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome.
And when it comes down to me at my core, it's really faith and family would be the two principles I would say that I operate by. Family has been so core to who I've been and how I've developed. It's what got me from a life of no faith to a life of faith through the prayers of my grandma, the hard work of my mom, the belief of my wife. So many strong women have come alongside, so many other family members that have lifted me up. And so family has been a central theme throughout my life, and the importance there is, it is who I am. Wow. And then the second part, faith. I didn't have a faith upbringing. It came later in life.
So your grandma that was praying?
Yeah, she was praying for me when I was in jail, actually, because she was like, wow. Lord, please help this guy change his ways. Right. She would actually...
Everybody has whiplash right now. They're like, wait, this guy?
Yeah.
He looks like a member of a boy band in the jail.
My head used to look like yours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so my grandma, she used to walk to her local church every day and place flowers for me at her Lutheran church there in Norwalk, California, South LA, if you're not familiar. And she would place some flowers there and pray for me, and the pastor would be praying for me. And I was in jail, and I was in jail for selling narcotics. I was 18 years old. I was raised by a single mom, trying to figure out how to raise a man without a dad in the picture. I have a great relationship with my dad now, and life's different for everybody. Wow. Not everyone's made to be a dad at certain times, and so we actually really good awesome. Relationship now. And so my mom was trying to figure this out. How do you raise a boy to be a man without a man there? And well, like a lot of single moms, she didn't have a lot of resources at her disposal. We were low income, food stamps, and she was just trying to get by. She had an opportunity to move out of South LA to a suburb called Thousand Oaks. And so she took that opportunity because
it's not far from where we are right now.
No, it's really close. It's a really nice area. Yeah. And so she had that opportunity. She did. She got a little room, and that's what she did. And she worked, and she knew if she could just give me a better opportunity than she had, everything would be a lot better. And she did that, and she sacrificed a lot. And so the sacrifice of my mom really paid dividends to where I'm at now. And so, fast forward, it was in high school. I got arrested and found myself in jail, and it's fine. That's where I was expected. My friends and I, we didn't actually think about college. Not one of us ever asked, where are you going to college? It's just not in the picture, not something we thought about. Most of our friends were on drugs or in jail, and that's where I went. And so it was expected. I got out. I'm like, dude, I'm going to be tough. I got more street cred. But God had different plans. I didn't really know God at that time. And when I went in there, I was first put into what's called like a parolee tank. It's people that have been to prison and going back to prison. These people are serving lots of time. Very, very political. They divide you up according to race, and they do all the prison things that you would think about how you operate, how you'll behave in prison. And so they were like, hey, you're 18, we'll make you a better criminal. But God had different plans. He said, nope, we'll put you in another tank. And I got put in a working tank. And I got surrounded by guys who you would not think, oh, these guys I want my kid around. But they were the best influence on me. They looked at me and they were like, you got a good head on your shoulders. What are you doing? You want to be a big shot in the pen or a big shot in the golf course? I don't like golf, but I got the point. Being a big shot in the pen sounded pretty stupid. And so I started reflecting on that. People started giving me scriptures to read. And I prayed. I said, God, and if I were to take...
Was there a person that was attached to that moment?
No, it was a collection of guys.
So there was not one guy that was just like, hey man, like this, it was all these, you had a whole group of basically just, I guess, guys being dads, I guess, huh?
Yeah, if I were to go back, this is my grandma's praying. She's dropping flowers off. Mm-hmm. She's making moves on my behalf, pleading with God, and he's moving on her behalf. And that's what happened. And so these guys who you would not think would be influencing me for good, they were. They were giving me scriptures to read. They were just doing things that were encouraging me to be a better person.
Any of these guys still around that you're still in touch with? Or?
No, they unfortunately, I was destined to be a statistic in that moment, and a lot of the guys were. And they just became part of the system. Yeah. But I became a kind of a story in a sense rather than a statistic, because God. And so, I remember one night praying. I said, God, Jesus is the one I'm supposed to follow. Soften my hard heart. Very Christian words. I didn't know Christianese at the time, but that's what I prayed. Woke up the next morning and just had a profound confidence that Jesus was the one I was supposed to follow. And so it was through the efforts of my family that helped me connect to faith. And those are the two pillars of my life, still to this day.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So it's you and your wife.
Yep.
Now you're doing life. Where in this whole story, these guys praying for you, and where in there does your wife happen? When does she enter your life?
She enters a little bit later.
Okay.
She enters about 9 years ago, and 2014, I went to Bible college after I got out. Okay. Started working in the church and through various movements of God to get me out of the friend group that I was in into a new friend group, and went to college. Came back from college with a computer science and philosophy degree. That's why I do software now. Like that. And in 2014, I reconnected with who was a friend at the time, my wife, and I was living with a buddy, and she was visiting, and so we just started talking, and then we hit it off, and we met at church, and that's how it got connected. So we've been together for just under 9 years. We just celebrated our 6-year anniversary.
Congratulations! So, that's awesome. Yeah, man, that is a great story. That is. I love stories like that because I can look over my life and I can say, without a doubt, I was very close at this point to being somebody who could have easily been in that situation. Yeah. And I have a lot of my friends that have been in that situation. Instead, I was on the law enforcement side of things and the military side of things and stuff like that. But it's just the decisions that sometimes we find ourselves in, right? You're in a place where you're about to make a decision. Sometimes when you make a decision, you have to ask yourself a couple questions, that are going to help you get to that decision. And those questions aren't usually, what are the consequences of what I'm going to do when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, right? Yeah. And so and now you have guys that are like 40, 50, 55 years old that are the same. They're still doing that. They never really grew up, or they never really matured or changed or allowed their past to have such a positive effect on their future, right? And I've heard a lot of guys say things like, "Don't let your past define you." I get it. I understand what they're saying, but man, I'm not letting it really, I guess, define me, some of the bad things that I've done, but I'm really happy that I went through some of those things, because I now know different. Yeah. I now have a better understanding of life, having been through some of the tough stuff, because now I understand what rough waters feel like, and now I know how to manage the boat that I'm in. Yeah. And now I know how to handle the crew that's in the boat with me. Yeah. You know, I got my kids, one of them sitting over here, and I have another one that's older than him. I have another one that's younger than him. I have a daughter that's in there somewhere. Yeah. And this crew they're so important to me. They, next to my wife, they're the most important thing in my life as a unit, right? As a family unit. I look at them and I say, if I had just done one thing different, none of that would be here, but God. Yeah. But God, there would have been, and it's just, I sit there sometimes and I look at stuff, and the reason I go down that road is because you mentioned that you have a degree in philosophy, which I've never really got my head around, the whole philosophy thing. I'm like, am I taking a test on someone else's opinion? That's kind of what I always thought of it. Tell me about the philosophy piece and how it played a role, because you did that from a Bible school. At a Bible school, you went and did philosophy, right?
Well, I went to Bible college to become a minister. Worked in the ministry for a couple years after that. Had a great experience. Realized being a pastor is not for me. And so, but I love the church, and hence I'm at pray.com trying to help build the future of church. And so what I realized from there is being a pastor is not for me, but I wanted to utilize skills and my talents to actually better the church. And so I went to a place called Calvin College, now Calvin University, and got a degree in computer science and philosophy. And so not a Bible college, just it's a Christian liberal arts school.
Got it.
And I went there because they had produced so many great Christian philosophers that have made an impact in the intellectual world and also in my church doctrine. No, they're in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I went from sunny SoCal to the cold winters of Michigan. And so for all the watchers, Grand Rapids, if you're familiar with the Mitten State, it's right there. And it was a great experience. It was like a dream come true to be able to study where people who I really admired intellectually had studied. Yeah. And it was a great experience because philosophy really helped me take a step back and start thinking about my way of life and purpose of life and how they connect and how I could take my talents and apply them in sometimes secular ways, but to make a purpose for the kingdom, for the church. Fortunately, I get to do that at pray.com, so it's not in the secular way. I get to directly impact the future of church. And so philosophy has just been a great tool for me to think through things that we're doing or that I'm doing in life or what we're doing at work.
Yeah. So pray.com, one of the most widely used Christian apps in the world.
Yeah.
And I had pray.com on my phone before I ever even met you or Steve. Yeah. And that's the other thing I want to talk about Steve too a little bit, because I just Steve's love great. That man. That guy. We have a lot of very interesting conversations. He and I just love that dude. So you have an amazing business partner. You have an amazing technology. You are impacting and influencing people everywhere around the world. How did you come to how do you think of something like pray.com? Is it something that's just sort of happens and because you and Steve were childhood friends.
Yeah, we went to junior high and high school. He went to All-American. I went America's Most Wanted. Yeah. I'm 5'7", he's 6'5". He was huge in high school, and then he got even bigger when he was at USC. Steve. I mean, we got some. I got amazing business partners, friends, brothers. Yeah. Steve, Mike, and Matt. Really, it came down to Steve, actually. He had the opportunity, because of a tragedy in his life, to do something different than he had been doing. And he had the chance to buy pray.com, and he did. And it was expensive, but it was a fair price. And we were able to utilize that to build the platform, pray.com, that we have now. And so with that, I ran into him. It was just happenstances, providence that came and put us together. I was working for a nonprofit called Mission India. Turns out when you have a felony on your record at the time, nonprofits are pretty much the only ones that will hire you. Yeah. And so thank God I was able to get that removed, but it took some time, right?
Good.
And so I was actually thinking about transitioning at that time to either, because I had it removed at that point, so I had a little more freedom in my work, but I was thinking about actually moving back to Michigan and helping them build out their engineering efforts at Mission India. Decided not to do that because I ran into Steve at that point in my life in Thousand Oaks, and we hadn't seen each other in a few years. And before that, it was just like, hey, how's it going? Just ran into each other. And so he told me, hey, let's get lunch. And so we got something to eat, and he told me about pray.com, and I told him about what I was up to. And we started just jamming on it together with Mike and Matt and ideating, talking with others, exploring we'd have different members of our churches come and test little prototypes of the app, and they'd tell us what they liked and what they didn't like, mostly what they didn't like. So we had a lot of learning to do, a lot of experimentation, but it was through just us coming together and a lot of people helping us out, that we were able to build something, ship something, get it out into the market, help the church. And so that's really where it came from, this idea, and it's constantly morphing through our experimentation, talking to customers and figuring out what the church needs to build the next 20 years of church, right? We just left the pandemic, which opened the church's eyes to, I would say, a need for the church to enter the digital space like they haven't before, right? Pre-2020, if you were doing digital community, it was a second thought. And the church general sentiment was that wasn't real church, right? It was in the physical buildings where church happens. And I think what we're seeing is a transition of the church understanding that you can do church in proximity, but you can also do church digitally. And there's a lot of people looking for church online, and they're finding not church, but spirituality, because there's just a plethora of things, and there hasn't been a let's call it an evolution of the church into the digital space. And that's what we're trying to help with these churches go from offline to online. What does that online digital strategy look like? And really build that infrastructure for the next 20 years of church.
So what do you think the church looks like in the future, though? Like is it do you see a drastic change coming just from a technology standpoint now, the introduction of all the technology and into the ministry area? You have all these, every major ministry has an app and these big, huge websites with, the donate button, and you got the shop, and you got all these things that are all on the websites that are just huge. I mean, is ministry changing that much? Is churches changing that much?
I think the church is embracing a hybrid church. And I think that's what you're
hybrid church.
Yeah. So that's what you're going to see. And that's what we've seen, right? The trends. We've seen it in our own studies, in our own research.
Sometimes you're in the brick and mortar, and sometimes you're online. Is that the hybrid church? Okay.
And so sometimes you're at the Sunday service in the brick and mortar. Sometimes you're streaming Sunday service. And then sometimes
that's my family. We do
that. Yeah. I mean,
I
I just did that this Sunday, right? And I try to understand where not necessarily the church as in physical buildings and the leaders of these organizations are going, but where are the church members going, right? They're going to vote with their eyes and their attention and their feet. And they're voting at, hey, I love going to my church physically, but every Sunday, sometimes it's hard. Maybe I have a big family, and it's like going to Disneyland every Sunday. It's like a 6-hour journey, right? And sometimes you may not be in close proximity, so it takes a while to get there. So it's easier to stream, but then you get more family time, right? You get to spend time with your family. Or you get in a small group in people that are local in that area and you're streaming it with your friends and family. And so I think that's what you're going to see that trend continue. And that's what we're trying to help facilitate is helping churches, not only with their digital media ministry, but also their digital community. What does their digital church look like? What's your digital strategy? And we want to help them facilitate that. And really what we've been able to do at Pray is become really efficient operators and executors of some of the things that maybe pastors and church staff would rather not do. Do they want to spend time on social media? Do they want to do they want to splice content? Maybe not. They want to produce the message. They want to evangelize, make disciples. And so we can help take away some of that operational burden. We're not a church. We're not pastors. Yeah. We're here to help pastors stay on mission. Their mission is our mission. And so that's really what I would say is that's what we're trying to facilitate is build that operating system for church for the next 20 years.
So it's not just really, it's church is changing, but also the way resources are used and developed is changing. I think the interaction between a pastor and the people is changing, and that's changing fast. And I'm seeing that just with Life of Valor, with our men's ministry, is people don't ask me really anymore about when's the next event or where's the next event, the next arena event. Now it's, hey, when are you gonna get your ebook out? Where can I go and get your podcast?
Yeah.
Where is the next big thing that you're going to, what's the next big content thing that you guys are doing online? Because all the guys that are his age, right? This kid over here holding this camera, all the kids his age, all they do, like him and Zach, the whole way up here. Oh, did you see that one where they did this and then they did that and then the thing happened and then the stuff over here went down, and that's where they're at now. Well, ministry's starting to go that way because I'm getting all those questions now, right? So when you're because your title there is you're the CTO,
correct?
So it's a Chief Technology Officer. Yeah. So as you're building stuff, you're quite frankly, you're just the bright idea guy. You're an idea dude, right? But that you have to also have you got to put some teeth to it as well.
Yeah. So I would say, I'm very blessed to be on a team with a lot of people that have great ideas. And so I look at my job as really, how do I take all these ideas, these great ideas that we get from internally, just people who are immersed in the data, the research, and also in the customer interactions. Also, how do I take the interactions from the customer, the Christian that goes to church? What about the leaders, the pastors? What about the church staff? And so I'm like, how do I take all their problems? I take all their problems and say, what's the solution? What kind of solutions can we implement to help solve these problems for church? And so I look at myself more as a problem solver than an ideas guy. And I'm just there to find the problems and let's solve them with technology, because that's what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
And so why not the church? Why should the church be behind on technological trends? If you look at weekly attendance in church, it's only declining. It's not going up. But what's going up is community online. And so there's an opportunity, especially with the technological revolutions that are happening right now, for the church to kind of leapfrog where they've maybe been behind. We can just leapfrog them right to the front of the line. And so we talked before this about, we try to stay at the very bleeding edge of technology to explore that for the church. How can we build that infrastructure? And we have to be the guinea pigs. We have to be constantly experimenting. Every day, new experiments, new learnings, new customer calls. Like we're immersed in this because we see the trends, and we want to position churches and the church in the best possible way for the future.
Wow. So what does your day look like then? Like I'm trying to put myself in your shoes doing that, and my brain just does not work that way. So explain to me what your day looks like.
Yeah. Well, my day starts with generally try to have, it starts pretty early, where it's just calm and quietness, right? Start with a little devotional. I've been using some new technologies to develop some prototypes on how we can enhance the devotional experience on that 101 with God. And so I've been playing around with that, developing my devotional that way, but then diving into before anyone wakes up, but we're a global team. And so everyone's always awake, it seems like. So it really starts, my week starts actually with my first call. It's generally customer support. Get on a Zoom call with customer support. What are the customers writing in about? Where are the problems? And because that's who we're building for the church. So I want that to be the first thing I hear. And then it's just constant meetings with engineers, product design, about how projects are going, but then also road mapping solutions, and then leadership, getting leadership aligned, making sure that they're updated. It really is. I'm diving in, trying to find the problems, find solutions, create alignment. I look at myself at the end of the day as I'm an operator and an executioner. And so that's what my day is all about. So it's meeting with people. It's helping understand the problems, define them, create alignment around them, and then create solutions and alignment around the solutions. And it's a lot of meetings. And then I try to fool around with, I do a release every once in a while into the code base. The engineers, they would rather I not at this point, since I don't have a lot of time to do that. Let us handle it. We got more bandwidth, more bandwidth. But So
you were saying earlier that Steve, when he purchased. You were just referring to the URL. You guys actually founded, built the entity, built the business.
Yeah.
But that was just the URL. Somebody had owned the URL, right?
Yeah.
Walk me through that one a little bit.
Yeah. So, I think the details of the purchase are, I think, a story for Steve. When we got it, there's nothing there, right? You go to it and just tell you no.
I can't wait. I can't wait to ask Steve. Ask that story, because that's a sporty one.
Yeah, and he's great at negotiations and deals.
Sure.
And he's a great networker, right? He's like a world-class networker, and so he has these connections, and he was able to get that. Yeah. And we had the opportunity to just cast a vision for what it needs to be. And like I said, it came from so many different perspectives and conversations that helped form that. And when we launched, it was private social networks for faith organizations. So churches were coming on and they were launching their communities and things like that.
Yeah. What year was that?
2017. Yeah. So
2017.
Six years ago, a little bit over, almost 7 now. And so we were launching it, getting communities on, helping them, helping churches step into that digital space. Back then, that was new. Not a lot of churches were doing it. And we were probably a little bit early in there. Not every church was ready for a digital strategy. And we started adding our own content, because Steve, he comes from a content production background. So he can make some world-class content. And so that's what we did. We made some audio content around Bible stories. And so bedtime Bible stories, James Earl Jones reads the Bible. Yeah. And so we were able to introduce a new take, what I'd say like an edutainment type take. So very, very much entertainment quality, because that was the background, Hollywood quality content. You have scores and you have this dramatization of the story, but staying true to the Bible story. And so we're doing that in audio, and then finding fun ways like getting Darth Vader to read the Bible, and getting that in front of people to introduce them into the church, but in a light way, introduce into content. So we get people that maybe haven't been to church in a while, or don't go to church. They download the app. We get people that go to church on a regular basis, downloading the app, right? So we were able to appeal from an early stage to just Christians in general, or even Christian curious. And so that's been it's been a strength of ours to be able to appeal to that wide of an audience so that we can get them to engage with faith, because we know that faith has a profound impact on your mental health. And so there's a lot, especially we come out of 2020, and I think mental health has been a huge talking point you hear in news and in media, because people are struggling with depression, anxiety, sleepless nights. And so we have bedtime Bible stories to help you go to sleep to the word of the Lord. Or we just did something with Bishop T.D. Jakes. We just launched him over the weekend. And so we did a podcast with him called Sleep Psalms. It's incredible. I mean, he's one of the greatest orators. It is just amazing. And he has this great line. He says, "Let the Lord be your shepherd tonight." And that encapsulates what we try to do, is we try to package up the Bible and its stories and its profound impact in ways that make it entertaining but educational to help you grow in your faith. And so that we just had just such a wonderful time doing that, but an opportunity to serve the church so that they can overcome life's many pain points with Scripture and with the stories of faith and how they've impacted countless people throughout history. And so, that's what we continue to do with our content. And we've had the amazing opportunity to work with people like Bishop T.D. Jakes and other pastors across the states, just amazing people, to help get their message in front of people in a digital space. So we're helping these churches now in this evolution reach people that they haven't been able to develop that digital strategy, and help them develop that community.
Well, that's outside of pray.com. That's like another thing that you guys do. That's inside pray.com.
That's pray.com. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So we've been fortunate. We were able to develop this this consumer software called pray.com, where a lot of Christians come, right? And they engage with their faith there. And we now are able to connect the dots between ministries and members. How can we connect them? So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, because if there's a connection between the actual content that you're having, and it's able to reach its mark and hit it from a technology standpoint. Yeah. Well, now there's a synergism there that what before now hasn't really been available. Yeah. And so as you're looking at what is coming for, like, on the technology side from here forward, what do you see that's coming up on the horizon? That's going to be things that you're already thinking about. You're like, I see that, and that is at the 15-mile range right now. Yeah. And we're going towards it. Now I know I need to do this to be able to meet those demands. Like, what do you see coming technology-wise in the ministry space and in the technology space as they merge?
Yeah, I think the thing that's transforming everybody's lives right now is generative AI, and
that was going to be my next question. I was going to ask him about AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to get my goggles. I can't wait to get rid of my desktops and just put on the goggles and work. But anyways, that's a side note. Really, I think AI is that opportunity for the church to kind of leapfrog where they've been laggards, and now they can be at the forefront because it's so revolutionary in its capabilities for content creators, especially. And what do pastors do every Sunday? Create content. They're one of the most prolific content creators on planet Earth. Yeah. And they spend tens of hours every week studying and then producing these messages that impact thousands, tens of thousands. Yeah. And we can help them get that, right? And so,
hey, Zach, what did you had a question? I know you did. A technology question.
I was just saying, I was going to ask how they're going to implement, like, using VR in some of this. If that was on the table, if you guys have talked about it, is that?
Yeah. That's a great, yeah.
Yeah.
So because I don't know if everybody was able to hear his question, but is VR something that Pray.com is considering? Is that on the table? Is that something that you guys are considering?
So I think VR is very much in an early stage, especially when it comes to consumers. And right now it lives in that game space, and I think there's a lot more to be developed there before it becomes part of our everyday life, especially when it comes to our faith. But it's something we definitely think about. We watch, Facebook or Meta is, dropping hundreds of millions of dollars, losing hundreds of millions of dollars every quarter on their developments there. And they're at the bleeding edge, right? They're the ones developing it, and it's something we keep our eyes on, but it's not quite there for mass production, especially when you have an audience that isn't necessarily first adopters in the church space. So I think where we have, when it comes to technology, the ability to impact the church most profoundly is in how can you utilize this AI technology to help ministries build a digital ministry? So think about it. We all probably volunteer at church. Do you volunteer in your digital church? Most likely not. You just, sweep, bring donuts, coffee, whatever it is you're helping, set up chairs, you name it. Well, the thing is, the digital community that these churches are trying to build, that we have 100 times bigger, 1,000 times bigger than physical communities, but yet they lack the volunteer force for it or the resources for it. And I think that's where these technological tools can really help, that we're developing to help these ministries be able to serve those digital communities a lot better and still stay true to mission and to the Holy Spirit. Because I think that's a lot of fear in the industry is, well, if technology comes in and AI comes in and personalization comes in, where does the Holy Spirit fit in? And I think that it's an augmentation of the way you're doing things. How can you do the things that aren't Holy Spirit necessarily led, right? Like slicing of content, putting titles and descriptions on things. There's a lot of things that I think the church community would probably rather not do, and rather just evangelize and disciple. That we can develop tools, and we've developed tools to help them already do that.
The AI space. So, I mean, the three of us were talking about that on the way up here today.
Yeah.
That in the AI space, it's like jobs. Is AI going to increase jobs? Is it going to decrease jobs?
Yeah.
And I think it was Sam that said that he had read somewhere that it's that 80% of the jobs that are going to be here in 10 years have not yet been developed. And that kind of makes sense to me. Was that the right statistic, Sam? Ish in there somewhere. Yeah. So that totally makes sense to me. But I also think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be stressed out over the fact that AI is here and can do their job for them better than them flawlessly. And they're not needed. And so in essence, the human touch being antiquated in many capacities professionally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So to the guys that are out there, because let's just look at it for what it is. I mean, it's like we live in a world right now where everybody is operating inside of some kind of state of fear of something. Well, fear is a big fat counterfeit, right? Being afraid is an emotion that we're supposed to have. But inside of that, being afraid, there's room for courage.
Yeah.
And sometimes just taking that first step out of fear, it still means you're probably afraid. You're still in that normal human emotion, right? And then when it comes down to war in Israel and what's happening in the Ukraine, what's happening on the southern border, what our politicians are actually doing, what's happening with our economy, and what's the stock market going to do, and what's happening with fentanyl coming up, and how many terror cells are in the United States. People can work themselves into a tizzy watching all the stuff that's happening. Then you add into it, their future may be uncertain because a robot's going to come and take it over, right? And so that's a lane that a lot of people live in. What do you say to that guy who who is in that space, and that's where his mind is. That's where he lives, and he's always wrapped around that. What do you say to a guy like that as somebody who's a professional in the technology world?
Yeah, a conversation that happens, believe it or not, in software engineering is, what does a software engineer look like in 10 years? A lot of code that's being produced can be generated through AI. So I work in a space. My trade is software engineering. My trade may be as much to blame for this, but it's also one of the things being actually what some people would say replaced by AI. I think a lot of things will be enhanced by the technology that we develop. I tend to be more of an optimist in this space. I think that a lot of jobs will be created just like we've seen with other technological advancements. And we'll have to figure out these transitions. And a lot of it is smart people coming together to think about how do you transition some industries that may be more impacted by like the writer strike in Hollywood. I mean, AI can write things pretty well. That's one of its strengths. And so how do you navigate those situations? And I think that's going to be heavily complex, and I can empathize a little bit with that mindset, because my trade is actually going to be impacted. It's already being impacted. You're already getting efficiency gains from AI. And so it's only a matter of time before those become even more efficient. And so I empathize. I don't have the answer. I don't. And I think we just have to fall back on our principles as Christians where it comes to loving our neighbor. And how can we empathize with them? How can we develop a society and a culture based on the principles that we've been taught through Jesus of love and loving our neighbor? And how can we help our neighbors transition during those difficult times in our society, right? So that's what I fall back on.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack with, the direction that we're going right now, and it seems like a lot of stuff in the media just gets left behind. And as I'm just doing life and getting my phone calls that I get at all times of the day and the night from these guys all over the country that I've maybe had a role in coaching or maybe mentoring or teaching them at some point, getting them to where they're able to, stand on their own 2 feet and kind of deal with some of their problems. And one of the things that I always remind them is, make sure that you're in the Bible more than you're watching the news.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most amazing things that pray.com does is it brings the word of God to somebody through their technology. Yeah. People may not want to carry around, a big fat New King James Version Bible. Yeah. But they're going to have.
Yeah, their phone.
They're
pull it out. And
Sam has it. They're gonna have their smartphone on them.
Yeah.
And on that smartphone, it's like whenever I go and speak somewhere at a church, whatever, I'm a ESV guy.
Yeah.
English Standard Version.
Yeah.
But I have a Message version. I have a NIV version. I have a NASB version. I have all these different Bibles on my bookshelf. Yeah. And so but now if I'm trying to reference something, I literally just go over to my phone and open whatever app and go to my Message Bible app and then just get that. Yeah. Well, with pray.com, you guys are making things so that everything is narrowing down to an app. It's the one-stop shop for all the things that you need for your spiritual growth, for your the way that you view maybe money, and the way that you view relationships, and the way you view. There's so much content that's on there that these people are able to. There's something on there for everybody. Yeah, and I think that's amazing. I would have never thought of that in a million years. And then when I saw pray.com, I saw it on his shirt, and I was like, hey, it was my buddy Jimmy May. Yeah. We all know Jimmy May.
Jimmy's great.
Yeah. Jimmy is I always call Jimmy is an adventure. He's such an adventurous guy, but Jimmy is an adventure. I love that man. But you had a Pray.com shirt on one day, and I was like, hey, I know Pray.com, right? It's that app. And he's like, yeah, I know Steve. He's a kind of a mentor to me and a coach to me. And I was like, that's awesome.
Jimmy's a mentor to all of us.
Yeah.
He's a humble guy.
Jimmy's, but when his shirt said Pray.com, that's the first time I ever really saw it written out.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at that thinking, somebody thought of Pray.com and went and grabbed that URL so fast. So when you were just telling me that a minute ago, I was like, yeah, now I get it. I'm going to have to ask Steve about that.
Yeah.
But man, so when you and Steve, like when you guys are at work and you're working on the technology, what are some things with Pray.com that you guys are devising right now, developing right now that we can see maybe here in the next 6 months or a year?
Yeah, without giving any trade secrets, no. So I think high level, what we're really trying to help the church with is not just getting great content out there, right?
Yeah.
And the content that really impacts Jeff that you need to hear right now. Mm-hmm. So we're doing that. But then how do we help you cultivate community in a digital space? And so that's what we're helping these churches do, is not just get their content out there, but also cultivate these communities online. And so that's really what we just launched something called.
When you say communities, what are communities online? So a church is a community?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. We just launched this feature called Local Leaders, where we help connect members to ministries, or just users that download the app, people that download the app. We help connect them to ministries online, whether they're close to them in proximity or whether it resonates with them based on their current life situation. So helping match them to ministries. Also matching them to maybe pastors in the space that they just resonate. Because what we find is you may go to a church, but you listen to other pastors Sunday to Sunday, or other people, other leaders in the space, other teachers in this space. You're learning from many people. That's how we do our faith. We learn from many people. And so that's what we are able to do, is help connect people, the people that really resonate with them. And so we just did a launch with, we just had a Sunday service with Michael Fisher out of Compton, California. Amazingly gifted preacher. And tons of people writing in, how do I find, where's his church and everything like that. And people are like, I'm in Oregon. How do I attend his digital church? And so that's what we're facilitating. And that's what I'd say the next phase is really diving into the discipleship portion. Let's make disciples, right? It's great to get the word out there, but let's make disciples, and let's do that in the digital space. And so we've already been doing that through our devotionals and plans and connecting members to ministries. But let's tighten up that and really build that.
So when you have content like somebody like that's a well, first of all, different kinds of content. So you have like pastors or communicators,
Yep.
right? And then there's people reading the Bible.
Yep.
What other kinds of content are there that are available that you guys are looking for, or you guys are trying to maybe bring to the forefront, or be able to use it to be able to create communities or to bless communities that are in the online space?
Mental health has been a pretty big focus for us.
Zach and I, we've probably done 4 episodes already on mental health.
It's a big deal, and there used to be a lot more stigma around addressing mental health, and those barriers are kind of breaking. And I don't know too much about the teams, but I know that there's some help that's needed in that transitionary period, right? And that's impacting a lot more than just people who are seeing these horrific events. It's impacting everyday people who are just going through life, because life throws curveballs at us that we all deal with differently. Some people, I was just talking with my wife, and I got I did some sort of eval that told me, oh, I can, the guy told me, oh, you handle stress very, very well. And then he's like, yeah, Teams guys are like right here and here you are. Not to like equate. Not on your level, but not everyone can do that. My wife's like, I can't handle that. Right. And we all deal with stress differently. I have friends that deal with it so much differently. I have people that work for us in Ukraine, in Kyiv. They are working right now as we're doing this. And it might be a little too late. They might be done for the day, but they're working for us in a war zone. And they're able to operate like nothing is happening around them, even though the world is falling apart around them, literally. Rockets. I remember one time I was on a call, one-on-one, talking to someone that was in Kyiv. And then the next day, he tells me, hey, I can't make it in. A bomb just went off 50 yards from my apartment building. All the windows are shattered. I can't come in today. I'll be in tomorrow.
He's like,
bro, take all the time.
Got it. You're good. Take 2 days.
Yeah. And, but then I have people in the States that work with them. They're like, I'm having a hard time even focusing because of what my teammates are going through. And you're like, but he's going through, he's doing it. But we handle life differently. And we need people we need people to come around us, say, it's okay. I got something for you. Jesus. And he helps us through that. And we have the Bible to help us through that. There's so many lessons. And that's what we're doing. We're extracting the wisdom of the Bible and the life of Jesus and giving it to you in a way that really helps you through these mental health struggles, depression, anxiety, hopelessness. I mean, there's no better hope than Jesus. So let's help connect people, but put it in a format that really addresses that pain point, not that skirts around it because it's a stigma. Let's address it. Let's address depression. Let's address hopelessness because they're real and it's impacting a lot of us.
I need to send you a book. Zach and I had a guest on. His name was Dr. Greg Wark. Jimmy actually knows him.
Okay.
He's one of my best friends on the planet. He's one of these guys who's just he's very I mean, he led me to the Lord. I've known him forever. I mean, the guy's just an amazing guy. Well, what I didn't know is that he was for the last 27 years just stockpiling all this information on post-traumatic stress, suicide ideations, the things that happen as a result of childhood traumas and how to deal with them, to the point to where he got that so down and so refined, he wrote a book called The Warfighter's Soul. And when that book landed, he was getting 4 or 5 phone calls a day to go and do media. Fox News was calling. And all these psychologists started checking about, like, how did you learn this? Like, I get it. You have your doctorate, but you're not a psychologist and you're not a psychiatrist and you're not a Christian family therapist. You're not and he's just like, no. I learned that just from watching them. Yeah. I have a lot of friends that are in the military and I see what they struggle with. And then what I do is I just kind of listen when God talks and tells me, I want you to go and help this guy. I want you to go and help this guy, because I don't always get it right. But over the years, I've gotten better and better at it to where I'm starting to recognize when something is really wrong. And then I'm being able to identify what is wrong. And then once I know what is wrong, well, now I can actually get in there and get in it with them and demonstrate the standard and lead the way out. And it's not often just like, oh, here's a bunch of, go ahead and eat those mushrooms, and nothing against that if that's what somebody's into, but okay, that's your thing. It's, I don't do well when my mind is altered. It just makes it worse for me. And so
I've been down that road. I don't like it. I'm going back.
I'm talking to an expert. If I have, so in talking with Pastor Greg, I call him Pastor Greg, but he's Dr. Greg. Yeah. When he wrote that book and I read that book, it shook me to the core. And then he gets on the podcast with Zach and I was just like mind blown because I'm like, what is that? And he goes, man, I've been dealing with you for 27 years, dude. Like, I'm going to probably have it down, at least to some degree now. And he's just making fun of me. He was calling me a handful. But all these other guys that I know that he's helped, he has literally shaken them to shaken them to the core.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So listening to you say that mental health is a big deal. It's something that pray.com is really getting after, addressing. They're really wanting to do that. That's super exciting when it comes down to the mental health space. Yeah. And understanding that it's a big topic, but what can you do as a software developer and as someone who has a pray.com app in the mental health space? Because that's the question in my mind, that's what I'm thinking.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And so we've been actually in a multi-year journey in this space and working with scientists and psychologists to help understand the impact of our app actually on people. And we've been seeing some very promising results. And it's when you actually think about it, what is the one thing that people highlight as the cause of our mental health recently?
What's the one? I would say probably COVID.
Social media apps.
Social media apps. Yeah.
Apps are producing habits that are not good.
Yeah, people are like, I want likes, and they're not getting likes. It's just
it creates these poor habits.
Yes, and these poor habits, and I think with social media, doesn't it like it gives people like a really unhealthy sense of approval? Like there's what is it? What am I looking for? If I text you and you don't text me back, and like that's not going to bother me.
Yeah.
Because I know you, and he's a busy dude, and it didn't rate a response.
Yeah.
But if we're in 10th grade, 11th grade, and you're super popular and I'm kind of like on the outs, but we hung out for just a minute and I end up with your number, I text you and you don't text me back, I'm going to be like, wait, what? I thought we were best friends ever. Right. Yeah. And I think that there's that micro trauma that happens every single time that, you put out something and somebody makes fun of you online or somebody does that. Right. Is that kind of where you're talking about the mental health thing comes from?
Yeah. I think that there's just been some studies that have come to light that the social media it's through these little micro kind of actions that they build up and have a profound impact on us, sometimes negative. And so if technology or apps can have that negative impact on us, why can't they have a positive impact on us? So one thing we look at in Pray, I'll tie it back. Trust me, follow me here. I'm going to deviate.
No.
We do a lot of experimentation. So we're testing features and all this stuff, and we're seeing how the audience engages with it. A lot of times there's failures. But even if there's a failure, if it moves something really drastically, I'm like, oh wow, okay, this is interesting. Because if it can move it in one direction down, why can't it move it in another direction? And so we'll iterate on that. Let's try to move it in another direction. Same thing with apps. If it's impacting our social or our mental health in a negative way, why can't apps help us in a positive way? And so that's where we come in with our app, where we try to develop these healthy habits, not these poor habits, these healthy habits, especially around faith and spiritual practice and community, so that you can actually strengthen your mind and your spirit. And I mean, that's what the Bible is about, right? We're reading scripture to not just strengthen our minds, but our spirit. It's supposed to be this armor for life. So why can't an app with the Bible, the power of the Bible behind it, do the same? And you just see this in research after research that's coming around faith and mental health. Positive impact. And so it makes sense. Why can't we use technology to reverse that trend that we've seen with other apps where it's maybe impacted people negatively? Why can't we use it to do something good? We're told in the Bible that God works all things together for good. And so why can't we use these technologies to do something good?
Yeah. So as you guys are developing things, you guys are kind of looking at the landscape of just how the web and social media has affected positively and negatively, and then you try to get it so that how can we counter that negative piece and get maybe get some good results out of what the enemy is trying to destroy in our young people and things like that. Have you guys ever thought about gamification and how that would play into Pray.com?
Yeah. So we introduce, I told you we think about it educational and entertainment. I'll use a case study from another app called Duolingo. They have done a wonderful job when it comes to gamification for learning languages of all things. And they've made a multi-billion-dollar business off of a language app to help you learn languages. Who would have thought that? Mm-hmm. They've just been really good at gamification. And so I think if you can use these same tactics that are used in social media apps for poor habit formation, why can't you do it for healthy habit formation? Duolingo proved the case. We're proving the case. We have some gamification. You open the app, you get a devotional followed by a streak, followed by a community board. Some people would call it a leaderboard, right? Ours is a community board, so it's not so much about competition rather than encouragement and community. And so we take these concepts that people label as gamification, and we apply them into just healthy habit formation. And you have to modify them. You can't just copy paste, right? You have to test, and you have to iterate, and you have to learn what works for your members and how they resonate with those changes. So yeah, gamification is very much a part of it, and that is what social apps are doing to build habits.
Yeah, because I always looked at, and I feel so important saying gamification.
It's a good term.
Yeah.
Good term. Yeah.
Yep. I feel Kevin McGrew would be proud. He'd be proud because I actually used it. So he's our technology guy behind all the website and all the stuff that goes on with Bram Radio. An amazing guy, and I always pick on him because he's super funny. And but the first time I ever heard him bring it up, gamification, I didn't know he was serious when he said it. Yeah. He goes, no, it's a thing. And if you have an app, you always need to be thinking gamification because depending on who you want to reach. If you're trying to reach like people that are like, and he's my age, so he says people that are our age, gamification is it's a couple notches down. But if you're trying to get a hold of a 19, 25, even a 35-year-old, gamification's got to be up. And the thing is, there's going to be more of those guys doing this online than there are guys that are in our age limit. The over 18 bunch. No, just kidding. And so it was very very eye-opening. So when I was just listening to you, so the reason I'm so interested is just, and also too, just listening to these guys on the drive up to LA today. Yeah. And they're talking about like the latest video game that's going to like be it's going to break the internet when it comes out. Yeah. And we have a friend of ours that works on that game, and just the way that whole thing works, it's just fascinating.
What game is it? Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I guess I didn't even remember what it was. What was the number? No, it's 6? 6, yeah. I don't. Are you a gamer? Do you play games?
You know what? I used to a long time ago, and those aren't healthy habit formations.
Correct.
So
what's up, dude?
No knocking the game.
What's up,
gamers
dude?
Out there? I'm a
look at him. He's like nothing.
I found that my personality is not best equipped for gaming.
Hey, show him. Yeah. There he is. Because when you're raising kids, my thing about especially with these guys was there's not going to be a game console in the house. Yeah. I'm sorry, there just isn't. But I can't control what they're doing when they're not at the house. And it still turned into, now they're older and they're out of the house now, and they're, got their video games. And I always tell them.
They're making up for lost time now.
100%. 100%.
I used to be a pretty hardcore gamer, so, I can relate.
Yeah, I'm not. I was too. I mean, when I was, but hey, I'm an Atari 2600 era guy.
Okay, I don't go that far back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine was online, so I at least, was post 2000.
You're post 2000. You're like, yeah, man, I'm in this millennium at least. No, man, I'm a baby of the 80s. And the joystick with the one button is what you had. Berserk. Pac-Man, Asteroids. Oh yeah, Centipede, Millipede. Dude, those are OG games. OG games.
Pac-Man still got it. The other ones that they've been buried in the graveyard of games that once were.
I know. And my wife and I were at Costco. This was Saturday. Saturday. And there's a full upright Pac-Man video game that you can buy at Costco. It's right there.
Yeah.
It looks like it was from an arcade in 1982.
Yeah.
And my business partner and I went. We were looking at buying some property in LA, and this, Brian.
I don't think I've had the.
You haven't met
Brian?
Brian?
Yeah. No, I met
Brian Tucker.
Yeah.
So we went to LA. We were buying some land up in Long Beach, and the guy that we bought the land from had this. It was an old warehouse built in the 20s, and in it was all these things that he used to sell items to Woolworth.
Okay.
The Woolworth store, and that's like
back in the day.
50s, 60s, 70s, maybe into the 80s, and then the 90s hit, and they started, and especially with online sales, Amazon and stuff, they couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And we're walking around the shelves. It was like walking around a museum. He had original Life games.
Wow.
So Life games, still in the wrapper. And not just like one or two, but he had like 40 of them.
Oh, okay.
He had original Atari 2600 games and they're still in the box with the plastic on them. Yeah. And he had like 60, 70 of them.
Oh, wow.
Those things go for like 15 grand a piece now or something crazy like that. Because they're so rare.
Yeah,
and now pristine in a box, plastic still on it.
Yeah.
And so we went and talked to the guy and said, "Hey, listen, you need to got it. We're gonna do a deal. We're gonna take your property. We'll buy it from you.
Yeah.
But you need to have somebody come in here and sell all this stuff and put it on eBay. Yeah. You'll make more money from that than you'll make on the actual building." And this guy was like 90-something years old. He's like, "You think so?" Like, yeah.
You want to throw it in with that?
unless you want to just keep it in the building. We'll take care of it for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I grew up in this really weird era of video games and computers. I remember being in 8th grade. We had a computer class and we were learning how to plot.
Yeah.
And it's just basic grid stuff. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, A, B, C, D. So C7, we're going to make that purple. Yeah. And B2, we're going to make that green. And you try to make designs using that. Yeah. And of course, and people were doing like linear stuff. So it's like from this to this. And you make that whole line. It was like a basic programming class for
make a box and you're like
for 14-year-olds in 1985, 86 years old, 86. It's just on a Macintosh computer.
Yeah, you were ahead of the times.
It was I struggled because I had to make the hardest, most complicated design ever. I literally had to list every single plot, and some guys were like, "I'm just gonna do a bunch of lines, and then every other one." They were done in 5 minutes. Mine took all day to do because of how I did the plot.
Yeah.
But man, we had two computers for 20 of us in a classroom. It was just a different era.
Yeah.
Now these kids are growing up
they got computers in their pocket.
In their pocket. They have enough computing.
I got two.
Yeah.
One on my wrist.
I heard somebody say once that there is enough computing power in your iPhone, more so than the entire NASA in 1969 when we put people on space.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
And
the
it's in your
advancements.
pocket.
But that's the beauty of the technology that we have. It's advanced so many areas of life, and not so much faith. So why can't we use those technologies to enhance our faith, to help us in our faith life, and help us in our church life? And so that's where we're at. That's where we come in and pray. So,
have you ever thought about maybe having like a kind of like your own version of Instagram or Twitter or whatever? What's it called now?
TikTok.
Is
Or
another
X,
one.
you mean? X?
X. Yeah. Twitter is X. And then so there you own like because earlier you mentioned community, right? And there's a lot of people that use social media as their community.
Yeah.
Now with Meta, they're starting to do this whole thing that's like some weird alter ego life that you can lead up
in the metaverse.
The metaverse stuff.
Yeah.
Buying real estate, and you have a persona that's there, and it's crazy. I was wondering if you guys ever thought of getting into that space where you're starting to really start to tap on the shoulder of social media. And I wonder if there are people that are anti-social media that would get on board something like that just because they're safer. They're going to feel more at home, and that they can share their views more openly than you maybe could on social media.
Yeah. Well, I think what we've learned is how can we give Christians a space, a safe space, a faith and family oriented space to do their faith. And sometimes maybe those activities look like they would on an Instagram or something like that. And sometimes they won't. So I think that what we're more interested in is how do we utilize the learnings from all these other apps and the actions that people take, and how do we take that learning and adapt it in a healthy way to help people in their faith. And so I think we're not so much interested in copy pasting an Instagram for Christians. I think that's been done and tried, and I think that unfortunately a copy, just copy pasting, it's not enough. It needs to be tailored for the faith experience, and that looks different than an Instagram, in my opinion. And that's what I've seen in the data and in our research.
You are sort of the expert in the room right now. I mean, if I lob that, if I can lob that out there, and you got these two here in the room that are like born with their thumbs attached to smartphones. So I trust what you say for sure. Zach, I go to him with every one of my computer needs.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Zach, got a problem. He's like, did you turn it on? I'm like,
It's always the first
that's
question.
what it was.
Yeah.
It's always the first question.
Was it
Is it plugged in?
Is it plugged in? Yeah.
He's a good IT guy.
Right.
He's a good IT guy. That's
a troubleshooter.
Yeah.
And he's just in the neck. His office is right across the hall from mine.
Yeah.
And so where it used to be a text message or, hey, I got to go find Zach. Now it's like, hey, Zach, how come this isn't working for me? Did you plug it in? I'm like, valid question. Valid question. Yeah, technology and I aren't really friends. We're acquaintances.
Yeah.
We get along. We don't talk at parties.
Yeah.
We try to avoid each other.
Yeah. We have there's a saying in IT. Usually the error is between the keyboard and the person. Right, it's in the use case of the person trying to use the technology.
Yes.
Usually not in the technology itself.
Right.
But that's not always true in the software engineering space. We tend to create bugs.
Yeah.
But that's what happens in a complex world of systems. So
when you look at some of the stuff that's happening in the media with, say, computer hacking and technology tampering when it comes down to things, and I'm not asking for you to go down some political rabbit hole. I'm not saying that, but we've seen it lots in the media where they're saying, well, the Russians, but the Chinese, and this is happening. When you hear that, what happens in your head? Like, where does your mind go when you see those things on the media? Right? You understand where I'm going with that question? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times because there's different threat vectors that you have to think about in security. And when you're dealing with these things you hear in the media, a lot of times they're kind of nation state actors. They're big actors. And those are very sophisticated, complicated hacks or people that are able to infiltrate that level of infrastructure. And so I think for me, I'm always interested in learning, okay, what happened? How did it happen? And a lot of times how it happens is actually pretty rudimentary. It's a lot of social engineering, calling you up and pretending to be your bank, or calling up somebody that works at in the government or whatever place they're trying to infiltrate. And so I always am trying to understand the threat vectors, learn from those, and how do we prevent against them? Because they're only getting more and getting more intense. And that's where we have to continue to, as Americans in America, lead the charge in software. We have to be at the forefront of technology because there's a lot of attacks happening in that space. And they're not just attacking bits on a screen. They're impacting people's lives significantly. And so I think that it's very important, I guess, for us.
Are we ahead? Are we ahead? Are we at the forefront?
I mean, I think a lot of people have different opinions on that. I wouldn't. This is my opinion. I'm not an expert in the field, but I would say that if you look at the technology that comes out of the States, the companies that come out of the States, we are ahead. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be true in the future. Right. And so I think it's important how different policymakers enact policies to really make sure that we become that, we stay at the forefront and we don't have a close second. I think we are. If you just look at how, what's being produced out of us. If you look at results in production, yes, but there are people catching up.
Wow.
I mean, you probably are more versed on that than myself. You probably have more
it's like
So I'd ask that question to
you. I have a few buddies of mine that I talk to that are in the Intel space.
Yeah.
And they are of the mind that if it comes down to a absolute pound for pound, the United States does a better job of creating, and other countries do a better job of stealing. Mm-hmm. And so when that information is stolen, ends up in those other countries, they do a better job of implementing than we did.
Yeah.
And so creation, stealing, and implementing, they have 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
And so that's how it was best explained to me. I was just curious kind of where you were at, and as far as like getting Intel and that kind of data, they're not going to share that. They don't share that with me because I'm not a cool guy anymore.
I feel like your crowd's a little more connected than mine.
The crowd's there, but the crowd also doesn't always talk to the cool in crowd, the active duty crowd doesn't really talk to us retired crowd that often anymore. But a question for you. And this will be the last question, and then we'll start wrapping it up. But if something happens and you're no longer here, let's say tomorrow, what is it that you hope that people would say about you? What would be written on your headstone?
There's only one person that comes to mind when you ask that question. It's no one else but my wife. And my mom, of course, and things, but my wife is my best friend. Mm-hmm. Was I a best friend to her? Because she's been a best friend to me. Yeah. And so that's actually what I think about, and what people think about me. I don't really care about. I care what she thinks about me.
Right.
And I think she would say I'm her best friend, and I did what I can. But that's the first thing that comes to my mind is my relationship with her, and had I live up to being a husband, a great husband for her, as I've been called to, right, according to my faith. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I think about.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Ryan, thanks for hanging out with me, taking time out of your day to come here. Man, this has been awesome because when me and the boys were driving up today, they were talking about all the technology stuff. I'm like, that's going to be a question. I'm going to tuck that in the back of my mind. I'm going to ask Ryan later today because he'll know what to say about that stuff. But man, it's been an honor having you.
It's been an honor being here. Thank you so much.
And and thanks to Every Nation City Church for letting us use their room here. And what community are we in right now?
This is Porter Ranch.
Porter Ranch.
Yeah.
In Porter Ranch. And this is like Simi Valley area.
Yeah, Simi Valley, the valley.
The valley.
Yeah.
And so thanks, Pastor Dave. I appreciate you, brother. So anyway, Ryan, you're awesome. Boys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Bram
it.
Radio.